Hey everybody, welcome to Locker Room. This is Southland's podcast for men, where we redeem men's conversations, talk about the right things in the right ways. My name is Scott Hatfield. Thanks for checking out the podcast. And as I always say, this podcast is about helping men find and pursue a relationship with Jesus. We want to redeem men's conversations, actually talk about things that matter. We want to challenge men to go and lead and fight for the most important things. And again, just want to shout out our locker room groups that are meeting at our campuses. If you're interested in joining or starting a locker room group, it's real easy. Go to southland.church/groups, pick your campus, start one or jump into one. Also, just one quick reminder again, the women's podcast, Tell Me More, is live. Just kicked off. If you're a woman listening to this podcast, hello, and there's a podcast for you too. And the men that always engage in this podcast, I'd love for you to encourage them to go check out our women's podcast, Tell Me More. It's going to be a great resource. Excited about our guest. I had him on last week, and we unpacked my story. And today, we're going to unpack an important part, a piece, just a small part that's been pretty prevalent over the last little bit. So if you missed last week, you can check that out. But my guest today is my youth pastor who made a huge impact in my life. And I started thinking about some things. So you helped me understand and get to know Jesus. You baptized me as a junior in high school. You talked me into preaching on a Sunday night for church, a Sunday night service, and I think I said everything I knew about Jesus in about 8 minutes, maybe. You as a senior,
I don't think there was a period.
Yeah, I don't either. I think
it
I
was
just
one
went,
8 minute.
La 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 la. Yeah,
1 8
absolutely.
minute run on sentence.
Yeah, I probably said it 3 times. Everything that I knew. When I was a senior, I was playing football and I was running track, and I was interested, obviously, in pursuing athletics, and I would be the first kid in my family to graduate from college. And my senior year, you said, hey, you should really wrestle with going into ministry. And I was blown away. I mean, I honestly thought, man, I think he's smoking something, because there's people don't, from my background and have my story, go into ministry. And I just got a Bible, and so what's funny is that what you saw something in me that I couldn't see in me. And about a year later, I'm wrestling through things, and I'm now talking to you as a college student going, hey, I feel like God's doing that in my life. And you saw that, You also introduced me to my wife, Sarah, Keith. You had a friend, Scott, who's the youth pastor at her church, and she just went through a breakup, and you said, hey, I got this guy at the church, that's new at this. And she came over one Sunday night, and she said she didn't pursue me, but she showed up at my church. And so she always has she's like, whatever, rolls her eyes. But
I can see it.
But what's funny is that, I've said this before on this podcast, but some of my friends that helped lead me to the Lord were like, hey, I don't know if you should date him yet. I mean, he's new at this. Like, it's kind of like Saul who becomes Paul. It's like, yeah, well, I don't know. Can we just see what happens? Because, she had such a different story than mine, but God just does what he does and weave that together. You sang at our wedding. I owe you a lot, don't I? Should I build a room at the house? I mean, what? I mean, my whole life. I mean, these are critical things, and you guys have been a part of all of that.
The amount of chocolate chip cookies,
is that right?
You consumed at our table.
Yeah.
That's probably what costs the most.
Yeah, I don't even know how you guys fed us. But Locker Room, our guest is Phil Miller. It's good to see you again, buddy.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Doing good. Feeling great.
2 weeks in a row here. We're doing it in one morning, and I carried a lot of it with my story, and I'll try to drive us to places today and do what I can to make it easy, but we're just going to cannonball in to the deep end.
This is...
it's a good cannonball body.
This is built. This body's built for cannonballs, baby.
That's right. So we're going to dive in for today. It's something that you and your wife Marcia have been navigating for the last 4 months, and I want to take us back, and this is just my vantage point, and you can fill in anything that makes sense, and again, interrupt me, feel free to at any time. But May of 2023, this year, I get a text from you. It was May 3rd, and the text says, hey, looking for a preacher July 2nd or 9th or 16th. Brandon, our senior minister, will be on sabbatical. This is Fairfield Christian. This is my home church. And we'd love to have you cover one of those weeks. And that afternoon, I shot back, and my role just changed. I've had a lot going on. Sarah's had some health stuff, and so I said, Phil, I would love to, but I can't. Sarah's got some procedures coming up this summer I'm working on a book, and I don't think I have the margin. I definitely want to come at some point. Thanks for the invitation. And he shot back, no worries, just always want to ask, give Sarah a hug from us. And then later you sent another text. You said, hey, keep me in your prayers. Found out last week I've got colon cancer. Don't know extent yet. Scan tomorrow, meeting with doctors next week, probably facing surgery. Hopefully that's all. In good spirits, peaceful. Pray with the elders. God's got it. And I tell my wife, and we just start praying. And about 8 days go by, and I sent you a text on Monday the 11th at 6:20 at night. I said, hey, what'd you learn? And you shot me back a text that night. I always work out at night. I get everybody to bed, and so I'm just out there sweating. And I get this text from you, and it says, found out I've got stage 4 liver and colon cancer. Also, there are some tiny spots on my lungs. No surgery for now. Liver up biopsy Monday. Port put in on Tuesday. Then chemo begins. No cure. But hopefully can extend things a while. And then you said, hey, 3 prayers. Number 1, pray that God uses whatever means he sees fit to stop the spread. Prayer number 2 is pray God uses whatever means he sees fit to shrink the tumors. And prayer 3, pray God uses whatever means he sees fit to give me strength to handle what's coming and thrive. Love you guys so much. And that text wrecked me. It's everybody's life. I mean, you can't. There's not a person that doesn't know somebody that's battling this now. Back in the day, it didn't seem like that. But man, my heart just broke in the garage. And you're 59. You're not
60.
old.
60 now.
60. Okay. You just had a birthday?
Yeah, July.
You've been married to Marcia for 38 years. You're in a fun season, man, where you get to enjoy ministry. So much of ministry sometimes is just trying to figure it out, and you're not smart enough to, and eventually you kind of get up. It's like you're skiing. All of a sudden you're just taking in all this water, and then finally you got to get up on your skis, and you go, all right, man, this is so good. This is what it's supposed to be. And so you're enjoying your kids and your grandkids. And so walk us back. Like, what led you to finding this out? Were you having like symptoms? Were you not feeling good?
I noticed I was getting tired a lot.
Yeah.
And what really kind of opened my eyes is I remember getting up one night in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, and it's like from the bed to the bathroom.
It's not far.
To the commode is 10 feet, 12 feet maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm out of breath.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out, like, what?
Yeah, right.
Why am I out of breath? Nothing hurts. Nothing,
Yeah.
And, first of all, shortness of breath. Okay, is that like, oh, my, is my arm hurting? Am I sweating? Like nothing.
Yeah.
And go back to the bed, sit down, everything's fine.
Yeah.
And then I just started noticing every time I'd get up to do something,
right,
I'd be out of breath. And if I was up long enough, I'd start getting dizzy and lightheaded. And but as soon as I would sit down, gone.
You're okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
And
I remember you said you were walking, like you were kind of walking, getting some exercise also, and like you just walk a little bit.
Yeah, and nothing. Get winded. And and I knew I had a checkup coming in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'll just wait till the checkup. And,
Yeah.
tell the doctor what's going on.
Yeah.
Because like I said, nothing hurt, and as soon as I would sit down, I was fine.
Yeah.
It's just weird. And so I had my appointment, and of course, when you're doing the checkup thing, you got to go a couple days early, get some blood drawn, lab work.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then waited for the doctor to come in. And when she came in, she came in and said, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "I'm looking at your blood work, and you're anemic." I'm like, "What is that?" She's like, "You're losing blood."
Yeah.
She's like, "You're almost at a transfusion level. Like you're at a low 9, and we start giving transfusions at 7.
Okay.
You should be like at a 14."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh," and then it started making sense. Like, oh, okay, that's why
you feel the way that you do.
I'm feeling the way I do.
Yeah.
And she's like, we got to find out what's going on. So she sent me home with one of those poop tests.
Yeah.
And I took it and brought it back, and she called me that night and said, yeah, you're losing blood in your stool. Yeah. And she said, have you ever seen anything? You know, like, no, never. Yeah. I don't have any pain. Nothing. She's like, well, it shows up, you know, in the microscope. So you're losing blood. So we're going to have to order a colonoscopy right now. And they got me in pretty quick. Yeah. Couple of, a week maybe. And then, that was the recovery or the colonoscopy.
Yeah, the results.
Yeah, and I remember, they put you out for that.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good nap.
Yeah, and, let me just stop. I know I'm talking to a bunch of guys here.
Yeah.
And the doctor says get the colonoscopy.
Yeah, do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Don't put it off. Don't wait. I did.
Yeah.
50 came around. Doc Jones in Shelbyville said, hey, it's time. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then we kind of scheduled it. Well, in somewhere in that timeline, we ended up moving. Yeah. To Indiana, insurance changes and all that stuff.
You don't always just immediately establish care with the doctor.
Yeah, and it was like, I kind of dodged that bullet,
Yeah, right.
Thinking that, and then a few years later, my doctor in Indiana, she's like, have you had a colonoscopy? And I'm like, no. And she's like, you're like 55, 56. What's going on?
Sure.
And she schedules it, and it's later than that actually. Yeah. But no, it's about that time. And then COVID hit. We had it scheduled. COVID hit. All that kind of stuff. Yeah. You didn't do. Yeah. And so in my mind, hey, I dodged a bullet.
Right.
Right. And nobody wants a camera up their rear end.
Nobody. Nobody. Yeah.
And that's the way I thought about it.
Right.
And now looking back, huge mistake.
Sure.
That. Because they probably could have seen something
earlier,
polyps, precancerous, but that can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
That's right. Can't go back.
You can't go back. So boys,
get it done.
Get it done, and it ain't bad.
It's not bad.
Gatorade and Miralax. If you're a Gatorade fan, you'll have no problem whatsoever.
That's right.
Drink it down, and
My doctor just gave us pills. Like I didn't even have to drink anything. Yeah. We just had to drink water. So you just took these pills and.
Yeah, we couldn't find the pills. They were back ordered or whatever, so I had to do it the Miralax, but
it's okay.
It was no big deal.
It's no big deal.
And then they put you a nighty-night, and
and
then I woke up. I can remember being back in my recovery room. Yeah. And I'm hearing the doctor talk to Marcia.
Okay.
And I'm still asleep. Yeah. Like my eyes are weigh 1,000 pounds. Yeah. But I can hear everything. And I hear him say, look, I've been doing this 30 years. We are going to send everything off, but I know what I saw. It's cancer. Yeah. There's a 2-inch mass. It's around the colon, and it's squeezing it. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. And, we'll with any luck, that's all it is. And we can probably just do surgery and cut it out and resect, and probably won't even need a bag, won't even need any of that. Yeah. But I can remember when he said it's cancer, the first thought was, okay, it's our turn. Yeah. But I just had an incredible peace. Yeah. Not anxious, not worried, not upset. It's just, okay, it's our turn. And so, that's kind of where it started. And then, of course, all this. You walked through it with your wife, right? Early on, man. Yeah. I don't know how y'all did it in your 20s. How long were y'all married?
We've been married 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. We had a baby that was 20 months old at the time. She's now 21. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know how we did it either. God just does what he does. He had people, and he carried us. And, when you hear that, it's, again, I've heard it from the vantage point of my wife, but, when you hear that, there's all kinds of things I'm sure that run through your brains and all that stuff. And you got Marcia there. Did they give you a timeline? Did they say, hey, well, really, we jumped ahead a little bit because initially they think it's colon cancer, and then they ship some stuff off. Yeah. And then they come back, and then that's when you're hoping that it's just that, and again. Yeah,
be easy, cut it out.
We can do it. We can move forward, and then you find out, well, it's actually, It's actually colon and liver cancer. It's stage 4. And there's spots on your lungs. And they say, hey, we're not going to do any surgery right now.
We the doctor, Dresden, who did the colonoscopy, he's like, we'll run a CT scan, and we're going to line you up with a surgeon and then an oncologist. Norton Cancer Institute, great, reputation. And so, we didn't know any of the results. And we went the next week and did the CT scan. And we're kind of waiting. You got the My Chart. You can look at it right instantly. Yeah. And my wife is just on it. She's just hitting it about every 5 minutes and nothing. So we go to the surgeon to the appointment, and we're waiting in his waiting room when the report showed up on our phone. Okay. And, that's a lot of big words and all that, but you see carcinoma. Yeah.
It's cancer.
You know what that is. Mm-hmm. And, she's like, do you want to know? And I'm like, yeah. And so she starts reading it. And, it's in the colon. It's in the liver. It's in the lung. Yeah. And then, as soon as we get done reading it, Mr. Miller, come in. And the doctor just sits down with us and, just a smart dude. And he's like, I can't do anything. He said I could, but I'm not sure you'd make it off the table. And for sure your quality of life would be terrible. Yeah. I would advise you to look at the oncology and chemotherapy. And if you don't, we can call hospice. And that's when, you were asking questions about, I heard everything in that colonoscopy recovery room. Yeah. Focused, dialed in, heard everything.
But when he started talking,
when he said hospice, I don't know what he said after that.
Moving.
Yeah, he's mouth talking, I'm not listening. Yeah, and I'm like, did he just say hospice? Yeah, and he's like, you don't, we'll make you comfortable and all that. Yeah, but you probably want to look at oncology, chemotherapy. But I'm telling there's no cure. Yeah. And he showed me, he walked out in the hallway and showed us the actual scan and in your liver, and he's pointing at all these dark spots. And he's like, that's a 7-centimeter tumor, that's a 9. And then he basically said, you got more bad liver than you got good liver. Oh, gosh. And he said, now you got stuff in your lungs. I can't really see it, but the radiologist says it's all over. Yeah. And so he's like, go check the oncologist. So we go to him 2 days later, and he kind of says the same thing. Yeah. He said, Dr. Mushtaq, a brilliant guy, and he just matter-of-factly just lays it out and just says, there's no cure. You're stage 5 or stage 4. Yeah. There is no stage 5. Yeah, right. And we can do palliative care. Yeah. And maybe... And this is where the prayer requests come from. I remember him saying, with luck and how your body responds, we can stop the spread. Yeah. We don't want it spreading anywhere else. Yeah. And then hopefully, over time, maybe we may see some shrink it. Yeah. And it all depends on how your body responds and if you can handle it. Yeah. And, right there, I'm like, well, there's my prayers. Yeah. That's right. However God wants to see it. And this guy's pretty science-driven. Yep. And we make a couple of comments about the spirit realm, and you can say, he's like, nice try.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. But, you could tell he's more science than spirit. Yeah. And, but we are. Yeah. And we're driven by it and the promises in Scripture. So we're like, okay, those are the things we're going to ask people to pray for. Yeah. That's what we're going to pray for. Right. And, man, blown away with what people just came out of everywhere and joined the Army.
In that meeting, you have Marcia there with you. What is that like? Do you mind just kind of walking us through? You're nervous anyway going in. I mean, anybody would be. You think it's this, and then all of a sudden, like the dump truck just keeps dumping stuff out, and you're both there.
There's no good news. I mean, you are hanging on to every word, hoping that you can hear something that you can
positive, redeeming,
Yeah. And there's nothing.
hopeful.
There's just nothing.
Yeah.
But, she's a rock, and we both had peace.
Yeah.
And if she didn't have peace, she was lying.
Yeah.
And she has a great poker face.
Yeah. She's pretty good, huh?
She's pretty good at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But no, we both said, okay, and we're going to walk this road.
Yeah. You leave this place, you got lots of people that care about you. You've impacted lots of people, and you got people that you love dearly. Who do you reach out to? Who's the hardest phone calls that you have to make?
Well, the kids are waiting.
Yeah.
And, so she calls, we call them first.
Gotcha.
And then I call my brother.
Mm-hmm.
He's 7 years older. And
Yeah.
He's my big brother.
Yeah.
So he's waiting. And my mom. And my mom's struggling with with some dementia.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
That conversation was hard because she wasn't grasping.
Yeah.
And it took a little extra time for
Yeah.
her. And then I called my best friend, Frank Donato.
Mm.
We've been in ministry together for years, and
Yeah.
accountability. And
Yeah.
and immediately he's waiting. As a matter of fact, I think he's texting Marcia
Yeah.
every 5 minutes, like, what's
Yeah.
going on. And then I call Brandon, my pastor.
Yeah. At Fairdale.
At
Christian
Fairdale,
Church. Yeah.
who's a very close friend.
Yeah.
And I asked him, like, please let the elders know
Yeah.
I want to get together to pray.
Yeah.
I'm on staff there. I'm also an elder
Yeah.
at the church.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And I remember back and where this is influenced from. My dad had cancer.
Yeah.
He had bladder cancer. And I can remember whenever he found that news out. And I wasn't even aware.
Yeah.
Like, I get the phone call saying, Dad's got cancer.
Mm.
He actually called me.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know they were
Yeah. He was
sick
battling
or
anything
anything.
yeah. No problems.
And he called my brother first, called me, and then he called the church
Mm-hmm.
to have the elders
Yeah.
pray for him.
Yeah.
He was an elder,
Yeah.
and he knew the power of that passage in James 5.
Yeah.
And so whenever we got that was
Yeah.
important for me
Yeah.
because, he went 18 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
You'd have never known
Yeah.
he was even sick. And I think he had four or five bouts.
Is that right? Wow.
It kept coming back. And
Sure.
he lost a kidney. He eventually lost his bladder, lost his prostate. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
Lord's taking you home one body part at
One
a
piece
time.
at a
Dad. And he just had a great
Resilient.
spirit about him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but yeah, he was my example.
Mm.
But those were the calls,
Yeah.
and Brandon made that call to the other guys, and
Yeah.
they were just super supportive.
Yeah.
And we met that was on a Thursday, and that
Okay.
Monday night
They got together.
we got together. I asked George Ross, who was preacher at Northside, a dear friend,
Yeah.
Matt Craig, who was preacher at First Christian Church in Scottsburg, a dear friend,
Yeah.
and Ben Woods.
Yeah.
Ben's just a dear brother, and he runs his own ministry with his wife, and just a prayer
Yeah.
warrior.
Yeah.
And they came,
Mm.
and the kids came,
Yeah.
Josh and Emily and Wade, Marcia, and we were all there, and they
Yeah.
anointed me with oil and
Yeah.
laid hands and prayed, and
Yeah.
it was just a beautiful night of worship,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was great.
Mm.
My daughter started praying, and
Oh gosh.
and man, she was bringing down the thunder.
Yeah.
I was like, almost like peeked up, like, man,
Is this my
go.
girl?
This
Yeah.
is my girl there.
Yeah.
Go.
Makes you proud.
And then halfway through the prayer, she just kind of stops and goes, and God, be with Dad, because Mom's not very empathetic. And that's the same reaction,
Really
like
tough.
all the elders
Yeah,
are like,
they all laugh.
you hear snickering. And,
Yes.
But yeah, it's just like, just give her a heart
Yeah.
for sympathy.
It'll keep you moving.
Yeah, and she has.
Yeah.
She has.
Yeah.
She's spot on, and
It's funny how God knows what we need.
yep.
And we have no idea until we end up in it, So they put the port in, they liver biopsy you, they start chemo. What's your rhythm of treatment like right now? Like, what's it look like?
I go every other Monday
Okay.
to the doctor's office,
Mhm.
and about 5 hours in the chair,
Okay.
recliner.
Yeah.
And they pumped me full of a steroid and then immunotherapy and then the chemo.
Gotcha.
It takes about 4 or 5 hours. And then they hooked me up to a pump.
Yep.
And I go home, and it pumps continuously for an additional 46 hours.
Gotcha.
So I'm carrying around a little man purse.
Yeah. Nice.
All I need is a man bun and some flip-flops. And I'm all there.
You skinny jeans, the whole deal.
I'm woke.
That's right.
But, I carry that around and got a leash, pretty much, and do that. And then go back on Wednesday. They take the port off.
Okay.
Or take the pump off.
Yeah.
And then I'm off for 10, 11 days and then go back.
Gotcha.
And we've been 7 rounds.
7 rounds.
7 rounds. We had a CT scan after the 6th.
Yep.
Numbers were pretty good.
Yep.
Liver was a little worse, but we're not sure all the details. And our doctor is still trying to get all the measurements and get the pictures.
Yeah.
And he's still trying to find it. So we're still kind of in limbo.
Yeah.
But everything else pretty much, one of our prayers is answered.
Yeah.
Stopped.
Yeah.
It's not spread.
That's awesome.
After this first scan, after 6 rounds, it's not spread. Unremarkable is the term that they use.
That's awesome.
Which basically means it's just kind of static.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, we can't tell if it's shrinking or not until you see some pictures. But they have recommended, not necessarily surgery, but he recommended me to an oncologist surgeon who really has a lot of experience with the liver. Yeah. And so we met with him yesterday, and what they would do is they would do a catheter. They'd run a heart cath. They run a
your groin
camera up the groin, and they can park it right in the liver, and they send they call them some beads, some chemotherapy beads, and they can drop them right into certain sections of the liver, and that will basically choke off the bad cells, and hopefully not hurt any of the good cells. Yeah. And they've had some pretty good success with it. And so we're wrestling with that. Yeah. Like, do we do it? Do we not? And and the doctor's like, I don't even know if you're a candidate for it, until we see these pictures. Right. And then I can tell you if you're a good candidate for it. Yeah. And then you got to make the decision if you want to go that way. And so that's kind of what I'm wrestling with now. Because I got a golf trip. Coming up November 1. Yeah. And I want to go play with some buddies, and got 4 days in Myrtle Beach.
Well, for those who are just listening, they're not watching on YouTube. You got all your hair. You got a fat beard. I mean, Santa Claus.
You calling me
ready.
fat?
No,
did you just call me fat?
It's a PHAT, fat beard.
Yeah, it is.
But you said I said, have you been sick and tired? I've kind of asked you that. You said, a little bit, but not. But you really haven't been.
I mean, listening to other people's stories and what they've been through and all that. Yeah. I haven't even touched it. Yeah. I get a little nauseous. I've thrown up a couple of times, had the runs a couple of times, take a pill, and it knocks me down for a few hours. Right. But I wake up and I'm fine. Yeah. And
last week you said in some ways I feel better than I did before.
Well, the one thing, they did a lot of iron infusions. Yeah.
Gotcha.
For the first 5 weeks, I got an iron infusion every week. And my my hemoglobin, blood level, had dropped all the way down to the low 8s, and stayed.
And what's healthy for hemoglobin? 13.
13's the floor.
Okay.
14, 15 is where you need to be. Gotcha. And I was at an 8, and so I was just whipped all the time. Yeah. But then that next thing you know, I had taken the car to get it serviced, and the guy said, "I'll be about 20 minutes," Yeah. So I'm at Walmart, and so I start walking around like, I got to go get something out of the auto parts area. Yeah. Then the fishing area is right next door, and I'm like, I got to see what I got to restock. Man. Yeah. And but the next thing I know, I'm up 10 minutes, and I'm like,
you feel pretty good.
I'm not even dizzy. Yeah. I'm not even breathing.
You feel different.
Heavy. Yeah. And I immediately call her, and I'm like, I've been up 10 minutes and nothing.
Yeah.
I'm walking every aisle. Yeah. And I did, man. I started walking in Super Walmart every while just to see.
Yeah, see how I'm doing. Yeah.
Nothing, And then when we went to the doctor, they did it, and my level was up over like 10.5.
Yeah.
And then the next time is 12.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I feel better now than I did in March.
Yeah. Right.
100%. I feel normal.
Yeah.
And so I can do everything I want to do.
Yeah.
I haven't lost lost an appetite.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I can eat anything.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, it's good to get some good news at this juncture. I mean, we're not out of the woods by any stretch of means, but you're going. It's almost like, hey, so you're telling me there's a chance. There's a little bit of that.
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
And they, the timeline, at first when he said, there's no cure.
Yeah.
We can try to make your quality of life as good as we can.
Yeah.
And if everything's great, the average with what you're looking at is 18 months.
Gotcha. With treatment.
With treatment.
Yeah.
Less than 6 without. And, we hear, and then it's like his next sentence is, and, could be longer.
Yeah.
I got people who've done it 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, you're hanging on to
everything. Single word. Yeah.
And then a couple of weeks later, Marcia's going back and rereading it,
Yeah.
and she said, what I didn't catch when he said the average
that's right.
is 18 months.
Yeah.
It's not you're going to make it 18 months. It's
right.
the average.
Yeah.
And
who wants to be average, man? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. And and she's like, you give me a couple years.
Yeah.
Or more.
See what happens.
That's house money.
Absolutely. Sometimes I've talked with people that end up with a cancer bout or just the floor falls out from underneath them and they battle anger. Have you battled any of that at all?
No, I can't say. I really haven't.
Yeah. I've never heard that out of you.
I can't find a reason why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, so many people have walked this road.
Right.
Great people.
Yeah.
And good friends.
Yeah.
Best friend.
Yeah. In the business that we're in,
yeah.
Who knows how many conversations we've had with people that their kid or their wife or their spouse or their parent or whatever. I mean, cancer just it's common. Yeah.
And I just can't find a reason to be mad.
Yeah.
Saw my dad walk through it joyfully and his comment every time going in is if the Lord keeps me around, there's a purpose.
Yeah.
And it might be right here in this hospital.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoever comes in my room.
Yeah.
And if he takes me, I win.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
That's
it. That's a conversation Marcia and I have had several times. And, I win.
Yeah.
Sucks for you.
Yeah.
But I get to win.
Yeah.
And so, the anger thing, the why thing, I've wrestled with so many other people who've gone through that.
Yeah.
And the one scripture, when I lost my best friend 6 years ago, was the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
And I just had to wrestle with that over and over until I believed it.
Yeah.
And say, blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at, you know?
Yeah. I put in here, we're not in control. We think we're in control. And we can even feel like it when things are going good, but we're not. We never are. It just takes a few words or biopsy results or a bad phone call in the middle of the night to realize that we were never in control, but we know the one who's in control, and he's sovereign, he's omnipotent, and this Bible is dripping with one miracle after another miracle, and it oozes of God's power and his mighty hand. And so this is such an interesting 3 verses, but it's Matthew 8, 1 through 3, and it's interesting because it folds in our stories, but it also folds in he doesn't always do this, And so Matthew 8, 1 through 3, it says, when Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him, and a man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, that's key, you can make me clean. And then verse 3, Jesus, he's healed people so many different ways, and he reaches out and he touches a man and says, I am willing. And he says, be clean, and immediately he's cleansed of his leprosy. I mean, as you think about that passage, like what jumps out at you as you see these three little verses?
Well, one is the man, whatever his walk before that, recognized the power Jesus had and believed that, he said, if you're willing, he believed that Jesus had the power to take care of him.
He can do it. It's not a matter of if he can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He believed it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is don't miss that Jesus reached out and touched that guy.
Yeah.
You got to wonder, how long has the guy had leprosy? When was the last time any human being touched him?
Yeah.
And that's Jesus showing the man he has dignity.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
And no matter what would have transpired after that, that alone probably would have been enough for the guy.
Yeah, he says, pick up your mat and walk. Or he says, hey, listen, I want you to spit in the dirt and put mud on their eyes. Go wash. I mean, he says, be clean, And it's interesting, if we'll just pay attention to these gospel accounts where we see Jesus actively moving, it's interesting how he sees people and he gives them what they need at times. And that he would touch this man and that you would see the compassion and the power. He wasn't afraid of this leprosy. He wasn't afraid of any skin or any type of illness. He had authority over it. But it comes down, though, the tension is what the man said. He said, if you're willing, And I have, just as you mentioned, these prayer meetings and elders praying over people. I used to run care here, and so every so often we'd have families come in and the elders would show up, and sometimes they'd let me come and be a part of them too, and we'd pray for people. And man, you pray these big, bold, believing prayers, asking, pleading, and sometimes you see it, God work and move, and sometimes you don't, and there's that tension. And why doesn't he always heal? And the short answer is he doesn't always heal us on this side of heaven, but ultimately, according to this book, everybody gets healed on the other side of heaven. And I think it was part of just the power in your text to me, and you said these three prayers. Pray that God uses whatever means he sees fit to stop the spread. Pray God uses whatever means he sees fit to shrink the tumors. Pray God uses whatever means he sees fit to give me the strength to handle what's coming and to thrive. And it's these 5 words, whatever means he sees fit. It's kind of Jesus' prayer, which is say, not my will, your will be done. Share that. Just talk about that. Because it's funny, this leper and you have a lot in common,
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, I mean, for me, we come into an understanding that we live in God's world.
Yeah.
And we're at his pleasure.
Yeah.
And hopefully living for his glory.
Right.
And I'll take what he chooses. Yeah. It's his world. It's his game. It's his story. And, if the people that are praying for us, if they move him in such a way that he heals me completely, it's his story.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah.
And if he chooses doctors and science, great. I tell people all the time, I hope that I'm here to confound the wise.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to keep going in and going,
hey, man,
quality of life is going up.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And, I just want my doctor just to shake his head. And really, after, I think, round 3 or something, he did acknowledge.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe the Lord is in this.
How about that, Mr. Science?
I about fell out of my chair,
Yeah.
And, but that God, if God confounds the doctors and turns this whole thing miraculously, it's whatever, it's his story.
Yeah.
And, like for me, small things, that night with the elders, that would have been enough.
Yeah.
For me.
Go and take me home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Small things like that.
Yeah.
You don't take for granted.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Yeah. You wake up every day and you see that woman.
Yeah.
And you go, it's another day. House money.
And that's where we're at. And like I said,
that's awesome.
I feel great. And so I'm going to ride that wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love that, man. I think death is such a thing that I think we're so careful to talk about. And it's like when the first Easter Sunday morning, it's like Jesus in the cross and in the tomb, he defeated three things. He defeated Satan, sin, and death, all in 3 days. And I think it's weird because we get so rattled so quickly. And the reality is we see all these stories in this book and just do a little deductive reasoning to know that, you know what, everybody that Jesus healed in the Gospels, eventually they die. I mean, people that were sick that Jesus healed, they die. People that experienced demonic oppression where demons were cast out of their bodies, that just God said in a word, I want you to go. They don't argue. They move on. Mm-hmm. They die. You know, Jairus' little 12-year-old daughter that was sick, and he came pleading just like this leper did, please come and heal my daughter. And Jesus makes his way toward her, you know, and he ends up getting touched by this woman who had this issue of blood. He heals her. You know, so that had to excite Jairus to go, man, he can do it. He can absolutely do it. And then they keep moving. The crowd's all around him, and he just keeps moving. And then they get word that his daughter's passed away. And he looks at Jairus and goes, hey, listen, just believe. Just believe. And they move toward his home, and people are kind of mocking Jesus, and he eliminates them, and he goes in with Jairus. And then he takes this little girl's hand, and she comes back to life. Well, eventually, that little girl, that unbelievable moment, and who knows? Was she 30? Was she 60, 70, 80? I have no idea, but she dies, you know. All the lines of people, you know, that show up when Jesus is doing ministry. Peter's like, you wouldn't believe it. The crowds are, they just, one at a time. He sees people as they are, and he shares what they need, and he heals them. Eventually, all those people die. And even one that's super, I mean, he cares about them all, but Lazarus was one of his closest friends. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, outside of the disciples, Jesus' closest friends. And he's away teaching, and Mary and Martha they send servants to go, hey, listen, the one you love is dying. You know, and it's like Jesus, they didn't even say Lazarus, so it's the one that you love. He's going, man, this dude is so important to me that he knew exactly who that was, and Jesus didn't come, you know, and so Lazarus gets sicker and sicker, and eventually, you know, he dies. And then he's been dead 4 days, and they've already put him in a tomb, and like Jesus comes back into town, and he's dead, like he's super dead, you know, and
stinky dead.
Yeah, stinky dead. And you know, he sees Mary and Martha, and they're so hurt, and they're in so much grief, and then all the people around Lazarus that love Lazarus. I mean, he had to be a phenomenal man that so many people cared about him. And Jesus is touched by their grief that John pins the shortest verse in Scripture, John 11:35. He says Jesus wept. You know, he was moved by, and he wept himself. And then he says, take away the stone. And they're like, whoa, hold on. I mean, Jesus, I think you're confused. You know, you're like, I know you're having a moment here, but he's gone. Lazarus is gone. That's why we try to get you to come. And then Jesus says, Lazarus, come out. And immediately one of Jesus' best friends comes waddling out of the grave. And it's this unbelievable story. It's what most Easter sermons seem to be talked about, because he is the resurrection and the life. But eventually Lazarus dies again. I mean, you know, I'm in some ways I even think about people who go, he was up with God, and he's going, wait, I got to go back, you know. He dies again, and the big idea for us is this: unless Jesus comes back first, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. Good men die, bad men die. Men that know Jesus die, men that don't know Jesus die. Death is a part of the story, and this year we've lost some Christian heroes of the faith, Dr. Charles Stanley and Dr. Tim Keller, and the reality is death's coming. We don't always know. I mean, you know, you showed up and, you know, just didn't feel good. I know of guys that just, you know, are great and in shape and young and blah blah blah, and they eat whatever, you know, all the right things, and all to find out that they died of a heart. You know, it's just, we never know, but it's coming. It's coming for me. It's coming for you, for everyone listening, everyone watching. I'm trying not to bum us out. What I'm trying to do is get us anchored in the fact that Jesus is who he says he is. And when he promises us in John 11:25 and 26, he said to Mary and Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. And here's the question: Do we believe that? Because if we believe that, it changes us. And so as you hear that, just what Jesus is declaring to Mary and Martha, I think he's declaring something to all of us. What do you think he's saying in all of that?
Do you believe it?
Yeah.
That's the thing, you know. I am the anchor.
Yeah.
I'm the one you can line all your chips up with.
That's right.
And you
Push
don't
them
have
all
to
to the center.
Yeah. Whatever it looks like, in the end, you're with me.
Yeah.
And that is the important thing that we all need to understand.
Yeah.
Is that putting our trust, our anchor with Jesus.
Yeah.
And allowing that to take over every aspect of our life. Because once you believe that, everything else changes.
Yeah.
There's no worry.
Yeah.
Even death's door is not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you're just changing addresses basically.
That's right.
And,
I like that.
And so, you know, when you find that peace of that, and I know there's a lot of people that are good believers that still wrestle with that language. But I've just seen enough of it to know. You know, my dad, you know, he went 18 years. You would have never known he was sick until the last, they had to take his prostate and his bladder, and so he had to wear a bag. Yeah. And the thing that bothered him the most is he had to wear his shirts untucked.
Is that right?
Oh, he was high and tight no matter where. Yeah. But he had to wear his shirts untucked.
Sure.
So for that. And that would have been the only tell.
Yeah, that would have been different about you.
Something's different, Jack. What's going on?
Yeah.
But he'd have never lost his hair, never did any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'd call him every week, like, what are you doing today? Well, I'm going to go catch the flu. That was his chemo day.
Yeah.
And that's
gotcha.
I'm going to go catch the flu for
That's
a couple
funny.
of days. But outside of that, you know, but even still, 18 years, Lord takes him home.
Yeah.
And then he was ready. And I saw that in my interaction with my father.
Yeah.
That, like, why wouldn't you want to go?
Yeah. If this book says that it is all that we can even try to fathom and write with our hands, it's bigger.
Yeah, it's bigger.
It's
and
better.
He wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something for me and our family. That's a reality.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid of it.
Right.
Because what's beyond it.
Right. For Fight Club, it's my men's group. A couple weeks ago, we just did the second part, which was who's God, and we talked about the 7 I Ams in the book of John, and we talk about Jesus. I'm the bread of life. I'm the gate. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. All these different things, and you know, it's funny how God just gives you things along the way. It's not my notes, but I get to this passage in John 11 where it says, Jesus says, "I am the resurrection and the life," and then I just dump out your story right there with those men. And you've already said this, but you know, I said, you know, we've talked for a bunch of times over the last several months, and I said, you know what I've not heard out of him? Fear. Is this hard? Yeah. Is it overwhelming? I'm sure. But I just know that you're convinced that he is who he says he is, and when you say, he says, I'm the resurrection and the life, you believe it. And I'm sure you've had moments. How have you battled down fear? Have you had to bat it down when it creeps in? What do you do? You just lock back into what you know? What is it that has kind of come your way that keeps that away?
Just keeping your focus where it belongs.
Yeah.
Eyes fixed on Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And heart set on heaven.
Yeah.
Passage in Colossians that. If you know, the one Marcia and I were talking on the way in today, and she asked me that question, kind of, and it's not a fear. It's just that it's always there.
Yeah.
Cancer's, you know, like you wake up, it's there.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I have to plan my day around stuff.
Yeah.
I got to take certain pills at certain times, and
right.
I got to go every other Monday, and I got to carry a man purse, you know, for 2 days, and try to get up in the middle of the night and go take a leak, and next thing you know, you're jerked back to the bed because you forgot to grab the bag,
sure.
bag with you.
Sure.
You know, it's just it's always there.
Right.
And it would be very easy to get distracted with that. But man, the blessings we have received through this, the joy that we have with connecting with people, the humility that we face when people have just been amazing to us and want to help, and you have to swallow your pride and let them. But how can you be mad, or what are you afraid of when you got the church there surrounding you, and you got the hope of heaven? And that's what...
This life is so short, regardless of what we get.
Friends of ours, I mentioned him earlier, Ben Woods, that's their mantra for the Brave Way Home, as they call it, is we're just helping wayfarers find their way to keep their eyes fixed on Jesus and hearts set on heaven and home. And, that has become our mantra.
Right.
And that just changes your focus.
Yeah.
The difference is, for me, I may know a timeline.
Right.
Where others don't.
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
Yeah. You've got an idea because of what some people said, and the reality is I could die tomorrow. I could die, but I get there before you. It's just the reality, But you've already said this, but I thought it's interesting to say you only control three things. It's your focus, your attitude, and your effort. That's it. It's all we control. We don't control much. Our focus, where we put our eyes and mind, our attitude, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and our effort. We're going to get after it. We're going to let it sack us. We're going to lay down. We're just going to blow up a bunch of balloons, have a pity party, or we're going to believe that, He's with me, He's for me, He's in me. He's going to keep moving, and to live is Christ, and to die is gain. And you've kind of hinted at this, but this is the longest we've gone in an episode without saying what the 2 words title for this episode is. And I'll just give them a quick on this, and we're getting close to being done. There's a gnat flying around here. Did you notice it too?
Yeah.
It's probably me, but anyway. But I said, hey man, this is what we do. That's what we've been doing. Just take 2 words, just to unpack them in a conversation, digging out God's word, to encourage guys and challenge guys to keep following Jesus and to follow hard after him. And so I said, it could be anything. It could be relentless joy. It could be resilient hope, all these ideas. And then you said, well, I said, you got any ideas? And we were just texting back and forth. And you said, hey, I'll go home and talk to Marcia. And I think Jesus will give us those 2 words. And so last week you sent me this text. And when you sent it that night, I got it, but I just hearted it. I just want to let you know I got it. But I was finishing working out, and I thought, if I probably can't open this up, And so that next morning, I was walking around the house getting ready to leave, and I said, hey, Sarah, Phil sent me the 2 words after talking to Marcia, and I started reading, and I just started bawling. And you said this earlier, but I don't know that they caught it, but this is what your text said. And then you can just respond on anything you want to after this. We won't dig out every one of this. You've been touching some of it, but here's what your text said, man. The 2 words are our turn. It's our turn. And you said for you and Marcia, we both said it when we first found out the news. These words serve as an umbrella for where we're at. And then you said, it's our turn to walk this road. It's our turn to trust God through the affliction. It's our turn to show the world how believers walk this road as opposed to non-believers. It's our turn to humble ourselves, to allow others to serve our needs. It's our turn to turn our pain into praise. It's our turn to point people to the hope of heaven that awaits. And then the last one is, it's our turn to answer the Lord's call to faithfully, if he calls me home. And then you said, makes sense? Is it helpful? I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. There couldn't be better words than that. But our turn is just, you're going, this is our opportunity. And you're handcuffed to the hope and the promises that you have. This is our turn to put our faith into practice.
Yeah.
It's what you've been telling people for
38 years.
Yeah, you sat in hard places with people, and now you go, you know what, do I believe it? And so anything, just...
I remember back, and you were probably in college when this happened.
Yeah.
When the Rendell girl.
Yeah. I ate lunch with her the day that she left. Jill Rendell.
Yeah.
Southern Acres girl,
Yeah.
Wally Rendell's daughter, Jody's twin. Yeah.
And I can remember what Wally said.
Yeah. By the way, she was traveling with the basketball team at Cincinnati up in Michigan. It was snowing. Roads were slippery. Was beside a semi. The van got off the road. It flipped, and she was killed. And she was, she was homecoming queen that year at our school.
Oh, senior?
Yeah, junior or senior. Yeah.
But I remember what Wally said.
At the funeral?
Yeah. He said, well, he was talking to Barbara, his wife, and said, well, we either believe what we've been saying.
Yeah.
Now it's our turn.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, do we really believe it? And that shook me.
Yeah.
Back then when I heard it. And it's kind of always stayed with me that, it's our turn.
I'd never been to a funeral like that before.
Worship experience.
Where all of a sudden there's a song about heaven, and then all of a sudden Wally and Barbara just stand to their feet, and their hands are outstretched. It's a peace that passes all understanding. It's a hope that goes beyond the grave, and they're just not going to let the enemy have his day. That this is, we will see our daughter again.
Absolutely.
And I will never forget that day.
And it made an indelible mark for me. And that's kind of where for us, we kind of face that same thing. Yeah. And we do believe, absolutely. Yeah. And there's nothing to be afraid of. So, following that mantra. So,
I mean, people don't know you, but it's like you're not a plastic smile on your face. Praise God, brother. You're not that way. I mean, you're always positive. You always have been, but you're not fake in any way. And so that's why it's so. And listen, I don't care if people get mad or they feel your feelings. God's big enough for your feelings, but it's been such, and I know you're not pretending. It's just been such a. What Wally and Barbara have been to you and so many, you are doing that with other people and even people today. That's.
It's funny, like whenever everybody heard the news,
right?
They just got to get to you. Yeah. They got to find you. Yeah. And that they're coming in with this expectation of a deathbed almost.
Right. Yeah.
And then we're starting to talk and laugh and cut up. And, I'm throwing the cancer card around as much as I can. You're like, I got cancer.
That's right.
Can you go get me that?
That's right.
And they're like, how? Like, what is going on here? You're just acting like it's normal. And I'm like, it's part of life, man. Yeah. It is. But people, when they leave after they've hung out with us, their spirits lifted because they had this expectation of gloom and doom. Yeah. And I don't know what that's going to look like. It may look like that one day.
It may get hard.
Right. It may get really hard and difficult. But right now, it's not, and we're not going to let it be.
Yeah, eyes up.
Yeah. And so, people leave, and they're like, he's okay. Yeah. And yes, and what I want people to understand is, regardless of how my physical body is, I'm okay. Yeah. Yeah. Regardless of what happens, I'm okay. Yeah. And that's just kind of where we're walking.
Yeah. Well, your wife's over in the corner over there. I don't know how she's doing, but just talk about how she's been amazing to you. She's in some ways the best thing about you for a long time, but what she meant to you in the season, just the encouragement, the support, the rock. I mean,
it's been no different than the 38 years before.
Yeah, she's just been consistent.
We've been a team. Yeah, I didn't understand that when I first started. Yeah, but over the years, of maturity, I realized I can't do this without her.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
And, when God said that, Eve was the helper or the helpmate.
Boy, we needed help.
Oh, man. And more ways than we can ever imagine.
Yeah.
And but she's been like that since day one.
She's the best.
And you guys have experienced the benefit of that.
Yeah.
And through the years. And, yeah, it's just another thing that Team Miller's got to face.
Yeah.
And but she's been a rock. She's had her days.
Sure.
And she's kind of talked a little bit about that. But in those struggles or difficulties, she's learned lean in.
Yeah.
Lean into the Savior, not the circumstance.
Yeah.
And but yeah, she's it's been great to walk this road with it. And
I'll move us up.
I'll share one thing. Like whenever I started feeling better, ever the pusher.
Yeah.
Oh, you're feeling better. Well, I guess you can start doing your laundry again. I guess you can start making the bed again. I guess you can start doing chores again. I'm like, didn't think that through.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
So that marsh is still there too.
Yeah, that's good.
I could not do this without her. I don't know how anybody could without somebody championing the cause.
When growing up in a home the way that my family's marriage was, it was so cool to watch two people, and you all were newly married, but it was so cool to see a couple that loved Jesus, that loved each other, and had fun. I mean, that was such a testimony for, if you told me, hey, describe marriage, it would have been like, no way, Jose, let's not go down that road. And then to meet some of these couples like yourselves and the Johnstones and others, Rodney and Pam, there was just so many people where you go, man, you know what? I wonder if this is different. It can be different, and so it's neat to think about just even the example. You're an example of Christ. She's an example of Christ. Your marriage is an example of Christ too, and it landed. It created an impression for me. So, 2 Corinthians 4:14 through 18. I'll just read it. We can touch it quickly. Paul says, because we know that the one who raised the Lord Jesus from the dead will also raise us with Jesus and present us with you to himself. All this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow in the glory of God. And then it says, therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. And then Paul says this, it sounds so insensitive. He says, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us. And then here's how it makes sense. An eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And then he says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen or what doctors say, but on what is unseen. And since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. And, I don't know if you have other verses that jump out at you, but as I read that, I thought that's you, man. That's you all. That's what you've been doing, So, and I love this passage, 1 Corinthians 2:9. This is what the scriptures mean when they say, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can conceive or has imagined what God has prepared for those who love him. And there's some great things on the planet. There's some great, amazing experiences that we get the opportunity to engage in all day long. He gave us taste buds, and he gave us the ability to see and hear and do all these things. But yet he goes, oh, that's great. But he says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can conceive what God has in store for those who love him. And so these are just great passages that remind us that, hey, this isn't it, man.
Yeah. Dig
in and trust, So any couple verses for you? Anything that jumps out?
Even on that verse, it's just reminding us Jesus is enough.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people that want to fix this world.
Yeah.
And since the day sin entered it, it's been broke.
Right. That's right.
And it's not going to get fixed.
Yeah.
And I heard a good friend of mine, Scotty Richmond, in a sermon. He said, there's a lot of people that are seeing everything that's going on and thinking the world is falling to pieces.
Yeah.
I believe that the pieces are falling into place.
Oh, that's good.
And we're getting ready.
God's using all of it.
God's using all of it,
Yeah.
and we ain't got to worry about this world anymore.
Yeah.
We got a home
Yeah.
in heaven.
Yeah.
But for us, the scriptures we've kind of anchored. There's 3 of them. Psalm 91.
Yeah.
It's my favorite psalm.
Sarah's favorite psalm too.
The image of him tucking us under his wing,
Yeah.
facing the arrows by day, darkness by night. And then Isaiah 40. I go back to that. I think I mentioned that in the last episode.
Yeah.
That, man, if you lose hope, read that
Yeah.
and realize how stinking big God is.
Yeah.
And you ain't got to worry about anything.
Yeah.
And I know Gary Black, you had him on. He shared Romans 8.
Romans 15:13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
May the God of all hope fill you with all joy and peace
Yeah.
as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit.
yeah.
I mean, gosh, that's through his cancer battle. But he said, it's not just a life verse, it's my life. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great verse for us to know. Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, through this 4 months for us, that Isaiah 40 has really helped me. Yeah, I don't have to take this on by myself.
Yeah.
God's got it, and I'm not asking for healing. What's more important to me is that he's walking by my side
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
If he chooses to heal,
Let's do it.
great,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're there
Yeah.
every day, I can lean in,
Yeah.
and he's got it. That's,
Yeah.
Stephen Curtis Chapman said, you lean on the breast of the Lord and you hear a heartbeat of love.
That's good.
And that's where I'm at right now, and that's all I need.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Before we wrap up, it's interesting about this podcast. This is what I'm learning about it, is that we have men that share this podcast with people in their lives that they care about. And only God knows how that happens. We also know that there are people that discover the podcast at different times. Like some people will listen to it, the Friday after it comes out. And this one will come out, in a couple weeks. But I'll get a text. In fact, I got a text from somebody this morning about an episode that I did when Nickel was the host about in sickness and in health, when we talked about marriage, about Sarah and I this morning. And that was like a couple of years ago.
wow.
Or you'll have somebody go, "Hey man, I love the one on Imago Day," and it was like 16 weeks ago. You're like, "Oh, that's cool." And then they say, "This came at the perfect time." And it's just funny how the Lord does what he does. But I guess just the last question, and we'll wrap up. But what would you share with someone? Again, they find this on YouTube, they find it, and someone gives it to them, and they're in a similar situation as you, or there's somebody in their family similar, or just something that's just equally a different category, but really, really hard. How would you encourage them? What would you say? I know it's a hard one.
Well, I mean, our last episode, we looked at some scriptures about advancing the gospel with your story.
Yeah.
And if you're a believer and you receive the kind of news that we're walking through right now, just be encouraged that God has given you a stage to point people to him.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of conversations. How you feeling? Feeling great.
Yeah.
And even hardened pagans.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Summon up the courage to say, "I want to pray for you."
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I mean, what better stage do I have to talk about Jesus and talk about the hope I have? And they see that. They're like, "You didn't handle it like my uncle," or,
Right.
This is different. And it's just be encouraged that you have that stage.
We should all be bold.
Yeah.
But in some ways it's almost like you got a cancer card, so you can kind of say what you want. And you really could drive a hammer.
Yeah.
You could drive that nail into the wood.
And they're leaning in.
Yeah.
They are leaning in to go, why is this different?
Yeah.
And, the other thing, we put so much emphasis on this temporary life.
Yeah. Right.
And, I'm going to take this temporary life and live it to the fullest.
Yeah.
And, I'll go banging and bleeding and have everything broken or whatever. I don't want anything left.
Right. Just leave
That's
it on
any
the
good.
field. Yeah.
Leave
Just
it all
leave it
out
on the
there.
field. Yeah.
And, take that story of Jesus and draw close to people and let them watch our life.
Yeah.
I remember a praise gathering I went to years and years ago, and it was the opening night, and it was already going.
Yeah.
And there was a college group coming from somewhere to sing, and they had an accident, and like 6 of them died on the way there.
Yeah.
And so they got to come out in that opening session and share that news with 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And the preacher that night was a guy named Steve Brown, an old guy, great voice.
Yeah.
Did a radio show I listened to all the time. But he's the guy that's speaking that night, and he's the guy that has to come out and tell everybody what happened.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could just...
Yeah, takes the whole place down.
Oh, yeah. But what he said is, the rain falls on the righteous and the unrighteous, so the world can see the difference.
Yeah, that's
and,
good.
One of our turns was...
That's good.
There's going to be a marked difference from how we're going to walk this road, as opposed to somebody who's not walking with the Lord. And we want it to be where the world can see the difference. And so that's what I would leave for those guys, is make your mark.
Yeah. The rain falls on the just and the unjust so that the world can see the difference. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Locker room, I'd love for you to do me a favor. I appreciate you praying for Phil and Marcia Miller as they continue this battle with the Lord's help. If this podcast has encouraged you and you would like to encourage Phil and Marcia in this battle that they're in, or just share with them that you're praying for them, or share scripture or anything like that, if it just meant a lot to you, Phil's email address is pmiller, P-M-I-L-L-E-R, at Fairdale, F-A-I-R-D-A-L-E, Christian.org. pmiller at FairdaleChristian.org. I'd love for you just to send Phil and Marcia an email just to let them know how much this episode means. I love you, buddy. You're the best. Marcia mean more to me than you'll ever know. I can't thank you enough for coming on today. Listen, he's been using your life. He has. He's been using both your lives. But I know in this season he's paints a platform, just like you said, and so you have a mic, and God's using it, and he's using you, and he's going to use this to impact a lot of people for a long time. And so I love you. Thanks for being on, man.
Thanks, man.
This is 2 words, our turn. There aren't better words, and what that screams and declares. And so just super grateful. If this podcast has encouraged you, I'd love to hear from you. If you're wrestling with Christianity, would love to talk with you about that. Or if you're looking to figure out what your next step is, we'll help. Locker room at southland.church. We'd love to help you. As always, if this podcast has encouraged you, please share it with a friend. I bet that there's some people in your life that could use this episode. And just remember this podcast, because I have no doubt in the future it's going to be helpful. It may be an anchor for somebody else. And so, men, get after it. Go lead out. Fight for the most important things. I love you, buddy. Thanks for being on this. We'll catch you next time on Locker Room.